What's up, guys? UFC Fight Night happening in Boston this Friday. It says Friday, do not forget. There's a lot of people that don't know that's happening on Friday. And the card is actually not that bad. I would say the previous card was better. This card has a lot of prospects, a lot of newcomers. In fact, look at every single fight on this card. At least one fighter has less than 15 fights professional. And there's many fights that there's at least one fighter with sub 10 fights. And that can make for a very exciting card, very unpredictable, especially when you go to the betting odds. And we are actually going to start with one of those fights with two fighters that are a bit of prospects in this organization. And that's going to be Jillian Robertson versus Maisie Barber. I would say two of the best prospects in the 125-pound division, and they're fighting each other this soon. Now, I had my doubts about Robertson before, because she didn't really have a good showing early on when she was on Tough, and I think the beginning of her career, but now is really starting to pick things up. Her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is top-notch. It's going to be something that Maisie Barber is really going to have to worry about. Barber, I'm going to have to say, is going to be the stronger fighter, a little bit more powerful. Barber has a ferocity and a very physical approach. She has a really good chin. It's a 125-pound division, but the fact that she's not getting hurt that much from her opponent, it allows her to really bombard her opponent to a TKO, and that's how she usually wins her fights. I mean, we're talking about a fighter who has 57% of her fights ending by knockout, and Robertson, on the other hand, has 71% of submissions from her wins. That's going to play very interesting because although Barber hasn't had many fights in her career, as has Robertson, Barber has stuffed every single takedown that's come her way. And Robertson attempts a lot of takedowns, a lot of trips against the cage, all sort of stuff, very grindy-esque. Tries to get it to the ground, and she's extremely slick to get arm bars, very quick to get back at the opponent. If Barber at all tries to explode, like something we saw Joanna Jędrzejczyk do last week, turn to her belly and crawl to the cage, I think it's probably going to be a wrap. Robertson's way too quick to get that rear naked choke, and her arm bars are especially dangerous off her back. We saw her even submit Emily Whitmire, and Whitmire is actually a pretty good grappler in her own right. Maisie Barber is just super explosive. Barber will attempt takedowns if things get dicey on the feet, if she gets caught or something like that, and she has to kind of reset. She'll push you up against the cage and push off of you and reset with you against the cage. And now she has this volume striking going with her. 8.18 significant strikes landed per minute. That is a huge amount. And 59% accuracy. That's something that's going to be very dangerous against Robertson, because Robertson's, of course, going to try to take it to the ground unless she has shown advancement in her striking that can surprise a lot of people like JJ Aldridge did against Barber, right? A lot more technical and a lot better with a footing placement. Was getting to Barber, and Barber had to just be a brute out there after. And if Robertson can do that same approach and use takedowns as a counter to the physical style that Barber will take if she's getting tagged, this can spell a very competitive fight. And a huge thing about Barber, the fact she's so physical, she gets hit so much. I mean, she's in the way, she doesn't move her head much, she moves her feet pretty well all over the place, but when she's attacking, she's running in straight lines. She's throwing her hands, chin up in the air, throws a kick, chin up still in the air, doesn't create the necessary distance to throw like a body kick, a round kick or something like that. She kind of just throws it without any posts, without any good footing and stuff like that. And just a simple misdirection or redirection from her opponent can get her off balance. Robertson has a much better striking defensive skill set overall, just generally all across the board. So my prediction for this fight, it's a very tough fight to call, but I'm going to have to go with Jillian Robertson. I just think technically Robertson's the more superior fighter, and she has more ways to win this fight. But can she handle that kind of intensity that Barber brings into a fight? I can be wrong on this one. It's very close. I think this might be one of the best fights on this card, but I have Robertson winning. I think she's going to win by decision, actually. I think she can use her boxing defense safely whenever Barber's trying to pressure her because she's getting tagged, she's running into punches, she's running to that overhand right that Robertson will throw as she ducks into the body, and ducking into the body readies her for any kind of clinch, body lock, anything like that. I think all those mix-ups can really disrupt what Barber's trying to do out there. And if it gets to the ground, Robertson, I think, is going to dominate. And then we go to Greg Hardy versus Ben Sassoli. I think a lot of you guys are going to be surprised. So right off the bat, we know both these guys don't have much experience. 7 fights for Greg Hardy, 10 fights for Ben Sassoli. And both these guys usually finish their fights by knockout, being heavyweight fighters, strikers for the most part. Greg Hardy being an orthodox fighter, Ben Sassoli being a southpaw fighter. And Hardy, we know, has that very physical style. Sassoli is a little bit more calculated. Actually, a lot more calculated. I looked at the betting odds because I know what they always do with Greg Hardy. I was very confident that Greg Hardy was going to be a big favorite in this one, but I think that's wrong, man. I think it's wrong on this one. I can be wrong because Greg Hardy does have the power to knock out anybody, and he is, again, very physical, and if he just catches Sassoli once on the chin, he might go down. But Sassoli, I think he's Samoan, right? So he probably comes in with that chin, that bone density that you don't see in any other human being. But here's the thing. I'm just going to go right to my prediction because there's not much to say, especially for Greg Hardy's side. He's very athletic, very physical, very powerful. Throws hands all the time, doesn't really kick too much. and he overwhelms his opponent with his power, usually. A couple fights, he will show a little bit more of a calculated approach and not just wing out punches and go haywire. And from there, he'll probably try to counter with an uppercut moving backwards, left hook over the top, straight right hand and stuff. He's throwing overhands a lot, hooks a lot when he's overwhelming you, but I don't think it's going to matter too much unless he just catches Sosoli on the chin, through the guard, something like that. It just happens. My prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Ben Sosoli. I think he's going to knock out Hardy probably first round, end of the first round, beginning of the second, because when I look at Sosoli's fight on the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, and he fought a giant fighter, someone who looks even taller than Greg Hardy. I could be wrong, probably around the same height. Huge reach on him. Sosoli's only 6 feet tall, 72.5-inch reach, 40-inch leg reach. He's a very short fighter for the heavyweight division, but he dealt so well with longer fighters. I don't think the reach of Greg Hardy is going to be much of a problem. And Sosoli is so composed. He'll look at the shots. He'll cover up on them. He'll make Greg Hardy very insecure about engaging him a second time. Sosoli has also much better accuracy in his strikes. He is a southpaw fighter. He has a very good left straight, very good left overhand, and he gauges it. He doesn't go haywire. He doesn't go crazy when he sees a finishing opening or something like that. He is so composed, and because of that composure, that is such a big factor coming to a fight with someone as inexperienced as Greg Hardy is, and the way he fights, he's so, antsy out there. And Sosoli's very good at pressuring fighters backwards, and I think he's going to have a better gas tank for this fight because of his composure, because he knows when to explode. His pacing is going to be way more efficient than Greg Hardy's. So I'm going to go with Sosoli on this one. Greg Hardy's a 3-1 favorite. Kind of crazy, man. And then we go to Yair Rodriguez versus Jeremy Stephens. Before the fight ended in 15 seconds due to an eye poke, we saw a little bit of flash, a little bit of flare from Yair before that happened, and he looked pretty comfortable, he looked pretty confident out there. Stephens looked like he was just getting ready. Now there's a different mentality coming into this fight than the previous one. Very personal, where Stephens is the stuff he's saying is pretty out there, man. He's very serious about this. He pretty much says if he doesn't end Yair, it doesn't count. That is personal, and you don't have to ask him. The reporters that were asking Jeremy Stephens this is personal after he said that, it's yeah, you don't have to ask him that. We know what it is. And Yair had a very bad attitude, very bad mindset after that fight, blaming Stephens. Stephens supposedly had a eye infection before the fight, and he got poked in the eye, and it was just not going to go well. And Yair was just playing it up so much. It actually did look like Yair was a bit too fast for Stephens for those 15 seconds. I know you can't say that too much, but it's something we already knew before the fight. We thought that Yair was going to be too quick, and he looked so fast in the beginning of that fight. It confirmed it for us. We know that for sure. And we know that Stephens can knock him out with any given blow. And Stephens said in that fight that he was waiting to just gauge for that opening. He was waiting until that he could blast right through that window. But will it ever show? Will he ever get in the distance? Will he have the footwork? Will he have the ring generalship? Will he have all those factors that got him to knock out Doo Ho Choi or something like that? When Doo Ho Choi cut off a sharp angle, he ran to a right overhand. Well, if something like that happened, absolutely can. But I just think Yair is just so much more technically sound, a lot faster, a lot better with distance. It's pretty interesting that Stephens is now the favorite, when before Rodriguez was a slight favorite. So it just tipped to Stephens. It's almost a pick'em fight. It's not much, but I think just a little bit of a change because of the mentality of the fight of both fighters. Stephens seems to be in a better state of mind, and a lot of people are going to say, but Stephens is angry. Will he run into something? Will it cost him the fight? I have a feeling an angry Stephens is a very dangerous one. I don't think it's going to be a one that he's just going to run into shots. I think he's going to look for that opening, not just wing out punches over the top. I think if he sees an opening, he will explode with even more power, a little bit more commitment, stuff like that. And it's possible that Yair is so much angry that he's going to actually take a detour to his regular path, right? He is a very flashy fighter. He likes to move away. He likes to use distance, to use his kicks from the range. And if he's angry enough to exchange with Stephens, he's going to get knocked out, man. He's going to get his chin checked pretty hard, man. That is something he cannot do. So actually, Stephens' whole approach is going to be relatively the same, angry or not. While Yair, if he's in the wrong state of mind, it can completely take him to another path and fight Stephens head on, which is something he cannot do. So my prediction for this fight, it is a tough fight to call. No matter what side you take, I know a lot of people want to see Stephens win this fight. Very close fight. I think if Yair sticks to his game plan, he should win this fight if he doesn't make any drastic errors. You know what? I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez. I'm going to go with the skills. I'm going to go with the technique. That's usually what I like to go to if it's just way too close. Who's the more technical fighter with more ways to win? And I think Yair can stick to a game plan. I think the range might confuse Stephens. I think those front kicks, side kicks, high kicks, all that stuff actually is something that Stephens has prepared for in the past for his preparation with Zabit Magomedsharipov. So Coming off a fight with someone who's longer than Yair, taller than Yair, just like the same speed with a very similar kicking variety, actually will do Stephens pretty good, and it actually makes this fight so much harder for me. And he is training with Tony Ferguson, but it is 3 rounds, so that's going to favor Yair. I'm just going to stick with Yair, man. I'm just going to stick with him. I have no idea who's actually going to win this fight. Like I said, the mentality is going to Stephens, while the skills are going to Yair, and it just matters who makes that first mistake. Because Yair can head kick Stephens at any given moment. Zabit couldn't though. Ken Yair, he's a little bit different with the Taekwondo style, rather than Wushu Sanda. So I'm just going to stick with Yair Rodriguez, and I'm actually going to go by a decision. I think he's going to point fight for the most part. I think he wins 2 rounds out of the 3. He'll lose the 3rd round. And then we go to the main event. And a fight a lot of people are looking forward to because for some reason, a lot of people think that Chris Weidman should be the one that fights John Jones next, which is something I don't agree with. I know if he wins, he has a stake to the claim, and you'll have to see it. But Dominick Reyes versus Chris Weidman. Striker versus wrestler for the most part. I would say Weidman is more well-rounded. He has a better wrestling game, better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. He's not a better striker at any discipline. Dominick Reyes is a better boxer. He's a better kicker. He's a better Muay Thai fighter. He's a better everything when it comes on the feet. Every single thing. He's taller, and because he's 2 inches taller, he might have a slight reach advantage, or the reach is practically going to be the same. The leg reach is a little bit different. 1.5-inch reach advantage can do some good, especially when you throw side kicks and stuff like that, question mark kicks. Now, I will say that Weidman will hold his hands up for the most part until he starts to get lazy. I don't know why this happens to him. He's always like doing very well in fights, and then he just gets caught because his hands are down. He makes some questionable error, whether it be in the Jacare fight, moving out to his right and then throwing out a right straight, while Jacare's looking to load up on that right overhand. If you're moving to your right and throw a right straight, even if you land, it's not going to have that much power. Very questionable. Throwing the spinning wheel kick at Luke Rockhold when he's on the opposite side. He tried to do what Vitor did, but Vitor was the same stance as Rockhold when Weidman was the opposite stance. So the opening is on the other side of Rockhold, not the one he tried to kick at. And whether it be Romero kind of conditioned him pretty well, or just saw the timing very well for those takedowns whenever Weidman just shot in at the same place every single time. And here's the thing, man. Dominick Reyes is powerful. Just like Jacare, just like Romero, just like Kelvin Gastelum, probably even more powerful than half of those guys. He is an extremely powerful striker. If he lands one on the chin, it could be done, and Weidman's chin is not the same. He's been knocked out or dropped or hurt too often, and he has to wrestle. There is one big chink in Dominick Reyes' armor, and that is the wrestling game. We saw Volkan Oezdemir, who's a kickboxer not known for his wrestling at all, able to out-wrestle Reyes, and he lost controversially, but that's just not a good performance from Reyes, especially coming to a fight with an elite wrestler like Weidman. And Weidman will mix up his boxing with his takedowns very well. Long-range strikes and times takedowns very well. His single leg is like a clamp, man. You just cannot get out of it. And his double leg, he's not the most powerful, the most explosive with his double leg, but he's very good at redirecting it. So if Reyes is defending it pretty well, trying to move angles, Weidman will eventually get him down. But I just wonder how much has Reyes worked on his takedown defense, because he has a huge advantage in the striking. Wrestling defense and defending submissions and getting off his back is really the biggest thing he has to work on. The striking, not so much. He pretty much knows what Weidman's going to do out there. Weidman throws a lot of jabs forward. He will switch stances sometimes, but it's a lot of jabs. He looks for that right hand pretty well. The right hand is very precise. The jab is always just a pick. Pick at him, look for openings, download data, see the reactions, all that stuff. But that's just not going to play with Reyes. Reyes will parry all those jabs. He'll land that straight right over the top. If you chase him down or you pressure him too much, he is one of the last fighters you ever want to do that to, because his redirecting game is something I've been talking about a lot. His redirecting game is probably the best in this entire division. One of the best out of all fighters from like 185 and up. The way he can just turn angles so sharply and land that big powerful right hand or big powerful left hand, depends which angle he's coming off of, or even head kicks and stuff like that. He puts you into a trap so quickly, you wish you never chased him down. You wish you never pressured him. And that automatically can throw off some of the wrestling of Chris Weidman. Because Weidman will want to be a bit aggressive with his wrestling, but with that redirecting game, it can discourage it just a little bit. And it is a 5-round fight. I don't know where Dominick Reyes' cardio is at for 5 rounds. We know Weidman could go 5 rounds. If I'm going to be honest, I really want to go with Weidman, because he does have the wrestling. He does have the well-rounded skill set. He does have multiple options to go to, especially going forward. If he's getting pressured, he's going to get knocked out. Like, it's just going to happen. If he's pressuring Reyes, he has a couple things he can do out there involving his wrestling. But man, I have to go with Dominick Reyes. There is a big chance that Chris Weidman could win. If I'm going to be a betting man, I'm going to put something on probably Weidman, just for the wrestling aspect of it, with the experience of competition he's had and the experience of 5 rounds. Right? Those are something you cannot overlook. But I think Dominick Reyes is eventually going to catch Weidman. Weidman has a very bad tendency to leave himself open at the most dire positions dire situations in fights. I think he's actually going to win the fight up until like the third round. I'm going to say Dominick Reyes catches him with one sniper of a right hand that puts him down and then finishes it off with ground and pound. So I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes, third round TKO. And now let's look at the betting odds here. So, like I said, there's a lot of new fighters, a lot of unpredictability all over this card. I mean, we got Randy Costa and Boston Salmon, two knockout artists. Anything can happen. I just think Salmon is a little bit better defensively and a lot better offensively than Costa. Molly McMahon is a 6-1 favorite. I don't like when they ever do this, man. I know Molly McMahon has more experience in the UFC, but 6-1, that's just a little bit too high for my liking. I'm very surprised they have Darren Wynn as that slight of a favorite over Darren Stewart. He is coming down to 185, but he's going to carry so much more strength from the heavier weight classes he competed at. And we know Darren Stewart is very powerful. He's very strong. He has explosive takedowns as well that can knock you out. But Darren Wynn is an elite wrestler with actually very similar striking to Daniel Cormier that can mix up with his wrestling and his stature. He's a very short fighter. Kind of surprised they have him that close. I do actually think Joe Lozon definitely has a chance to win this fight against Jonathan Pierce because Pierce is just very slow with his counter shots, with his movements, with his placements, everything involved. And I think Lozon, with his power and his ferocity, can eventually find an opening. And that's pretty much it, man. So I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions. If you did, make sure to give a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. Remember, this is on Friday, not Saturday. And I'm going to make a breakdown of one of the fights this weekend, so be looking for that. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.